Welcome to our channel where we update the dramatic, attractive, and unforgettable details of the TV series Beyond the Gates. If you are a fan of unexpected twists, deep family tragedies and shocking secrets being exposed, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future developments. Ted stood in the living room. The afternoon light shining through the large window, creating long streaks of light on the wooden floor. He looked around the house once more, where sweet and bitter memories were once held, where laughter and tears intertwined endlessly. Suddenly there was a light knock on the door, making his heart beat faster in his chest. It had been weeks since he last saw Nicole, and every passing moment was a constant torment. He stepped out, his heart filled with hope and anxiety, and as the door opened, Nicole's image appeared before his eyes like an illusion. Gentle but cold, like a sudden winter wind blowing in on a summer day. No smile. No tears. No words. Only her calm and sharp eyes looked through him. Ted smiled slightly, trying to find some familiar warmth in those eyes, believing that her appearance was a signal of reconciliation. He took a step back, opening the door wider to invite her in. His heart feeling like a heavy stone had been lifted from his chest. But Nicole said nothing. She walked to the table in the middle of the living room, where they used to sit and drink coffee in the morning and share the small stories of life. Her hand gently placed a white envelope on the table, her movement decisive but unhurried, as if she had calculated this moment for a long time. She didn't turn to look at Ted, nor did she wait for him to ask. She just left the envelope there and turned and walked away, her high heels clicking lightly on the floor like a chorus of the end. The door closed behind her, the sound echoing like a cold full stop. Ted stood still for a long time, his hand still not touching the envelope. He didn't know what was waiting for him inside, but a feeling of unease was creeping into every fiber of his being. Finally, he reached out and opened it. Inside were two things. The first piece of paper caught his eye with cold, clear, unexplained words: divorce papers. Each word was like a sharp knife cutting into his pride. He tried to stay calm, trying to find some glimmer of hope in the remaining stack of papers. But then, when his eyes stopped on the title of the second document, the air seemed to stop. DNA test results. The numbers, the sample names, and the final conclusion were clear and undeniable: the child he had believed was his blood was not his. The room seemed to collapse around Ted. His breath caught. His legs wobbled as if they had no strength left. Memories flooded back, from the moment Nicole told him she was pregnant, to the time they chose a name for the child, to the first day he held the child in his arms and vowed to protect it for the rest of his life. It was all a lie now. He sank into his chair, eyes still glued to the paper, hands shaking uncontrollably. His head was spinning with unanswered questions. Who was the biological father? When had Nicole known? Did she ever truly love him? Or was it all a cruel act to hide her betrayal? The feeling of betrayal surged, mixed with anger, humiliation, and indescribable pain. He had thought he could forgive Nicole for any mistake. That love was strong enough to overcome any storm. But the stark truth had killed any remaining hope. Every minute that passed felt like torture, every breath felt like a stab in the chest. He crumpled the document in his hand and then put it down, realizing that he couldn't change the truth just by refusing to look at it. Part of him still hoped that there was something wrong, that this was just a cruel joke. But deep down, he knew that the truth couldn't be denied. The house that had once been warm had become as cold as a tomb. The family photos hanging on the walls were now just framed lies. The child's toys were scattered around the room like the remaining fragments of a shattered illusion. Ted stood up and walked heavily to the window, looking out at the garden where he had played with the child, where laughter and affectionate calls for his father had echoed. Now, each sound was a dagger to his heart. He felt as if he had lost everything: the wife he loved, the child he had thought was his, and himself. Anger welled up inside him, not just at Nicole, but at himself, for having trusted too much, for being so blind. But at the same time, a deep sadness enveloped him, as if his soul had been torn apart. He didn't know how to move on. Didn't know if he could recover from this fall. But he knew one thing for sure, there was no turning back. There was nothing left to hold on to. There was no love, only brokenness. The next morning, the house was still dark despite the sunlight streaming through the windows. Ted was still sitting there, his shirt crumpled, his face haggard from a sleepless night. The papers scattered at his feet had not been picked up. The room had the look of a crime scene, where the victim was his heart, stabbed, crushed, and left cold. But instead of crying or smashing things, he quietly gathered each piece of paper, each piece of his shattered life, and carefully put it back in the envelope. Not to forgive. Nor to keep it as a souvenir. But to prepare for a journey he was forced to face the truth, to face Nicole, and most of all, to face himself. In the following days, Ted lived like a shadow. He did not go to the company, did not call his friends, did not reply to any messages. In his mind, there was only one question that repeated over and over like the hand on a clock. Who was the father of the child? He could not let that question remain unanswered. He needed the truth, not because he wanted to hold on to Nicole, but because he wanted to regain control of his life, to regain respect for himself. With a fake calmness, he quietly began to search. He went through all of Nicole's old contacts, looked at photos, phone logs, and deleted emails. Little by little, clues were pieced together. A strange name appeared repeatedly in the call history, Logan, a seemingly harmless name but with unusual frequency. In the months before Nicole left, Logan had called often late at night, when Ted was asleep. Nicole once said it was a co-worker in personal trouble. Ted didn't suspect anything. But now everything seemed to have an answer. Ted found the address of the company where Logan used to work. He didn't rush to contact her. Instead, he went there, quietly observing. Like a detective on his own quest for justice. And then, when he saw Logan walk out of the building, his gait leisurely and his face strangely similar to the child's, his heart clenched. His senses never lied. Logan was the biological father. No other tests were needed. The truth was so clear. Ted did not approach, did not confront, did not demand anything. Just stood from afar. Like an invisible witness to a cruel truth. He returned home with a heavy mind. What was left now was only acceptance. Not resignation, but a journey to free himself from the obsession. He signed the divorce papers. No tears, no trembling. Just silently, as if closing a rotten door. He put the envelope with the test results in a box, locked it in a drawer, not to forget, but to remind. From now on, he would live on, but no longer naive. No longer believing that love was enough to erase all secrets. No longer believing that what we see is all the truth. A week later, Ted left that house, once a home, now a morgue of emotions. He moved to a smaller apartment, where there was no laughter of children, no trace of Nicole, no trace of a fake life. There, he began to write. Not a diary, but the truth. With words, he washed away the pain. Each line was a step towards the light. He did not blame Nicole, even though she had betrayed him. He did not hate the child, even though it was not his. He just learned to let go of what was no longer his. And most importantly, he learned to start over with a broken heart, but loving himself more than ever. Ted's story does not end with revenge, does not end with a hug of reconciliation or a miracle of reunion. It ends with an awakening, a painful but necessary awakening. He is no longer the man he was. He is a new man, strong, experienced, and knows that there are things that, when lost, do not need to be regained. Just move on, hold your head high, and do not look back. Thank you for following Ted's bitter and resurrected emotional journey in this special episode of Beyond the Gates. If you are attracted to real tragedies, psychological twists, and characters with many layers of depth like Ted, then don't forget to follow and subscribe to our channel to continue discovering the latest, most dramatic, and most emotional developments in the next episodes. See you in the next newsletter.